Hi, my name's Eric. I'll be reading you selections from this week's Falmouth Enterprise, dated Friday, August 7th of 2026. That date's important because we'll repeat this reading through Tuesday of next week. If you hear something on Monday and Tuesday in this reading, it may have already happened over the weekend. But since many of our listeners enjoy hearing this on the day of publication, which is Friday, the weather forecast is relevant. This afternoon, mostly sunny. At night, partly cloudy, high of 81, the low around 72. It will be humid, though, so it will feel a lot warmer than 81 or 72. Tomorrow during the day, mostly sunny, a high of 80. At night, partly cloudy, same as far as humidity, a low around 72. The extended forecast for Sunday calls for sunny during the day, mostly clear at night with a high of 82 and a low of 72, and it probably will be the warmest day of the weekend, and again, humidity will be high. There are several meetings scheduled for next week. The Select Board meets Monday at 6:30 p.m. in the Senior Center. The Library Trustees meet Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. in the main library with Google Meet as an option. Planning Board meets Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. in the Town Hall. The Energy Committee meets Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. in the Town Hall. The Conservation Commission also meets on Wednesday at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Recreation Committee meets Wednesday at 7 p.m. at the Gus Canty Community Center. The Affordable Housing Committee meets Thursday at 4 p.m. in the Town Hall. The Zoning Board of Appeals meets Thursday at 6 p.m. at the Town Hall. The Community Preservation Committee meets Thursday at 6:30 p.m. in the School Administration Building. Since there is a Select Board meeting, and we did have a request to always read the agenda for the Select Board so that you know what's going on with the decision makers in your town and what people are debating in terms of what's good or not so good for the town, we will read the Select Board agenda. We also had some people complain about the agenda being quite dull and not something that they wanted. So we will read this, as they say, apace. In other words, we will move through it fairly quickly. This week's is a pretty brief agenda compared to what they normally have, and it won't take, hopefully, too long to get through. The Select Board set to meet on Monday, August 10th, at the Senior Center, and the meeting begins at 6:30 p.m. with open session, call to order, then the Pledge of Allegiance, recognition, announcements, the town manager's report, and public comment. Consent agenda comes next with licenses, and they're considering an application to Cravings Pizza and Ice Cream, doing business as Simply Divine Pizza, for a change of hours. Consider a vote to approve an application by Cravings Pizza and Ice Cream, doing it as Simply Divine Pizza, for a change of DBA to Little Rosa Pizzeria and Espresso Bar. Consider a vote to approve an application by the Old Casino, doing business as the Old Casino at 286 Grand Avenue, Suite 9, for a change of hours to its all-alcoholic beverages restaurant license. Administrative orders come next. Consider a vote to authorize the Marine and Environmental Services Department to apply for a fiscal year 2027 Seaport Economic Council dredging and regional equipment grant for construction dredging at the Eel River Inlet. On to business. Consider a vote to authorize an application for Community Preservation Act funding for improvements to the softball field located at 340 T-Ticket Highway, adjacent to the School Administration Building. Discuss and consider a vote to transmit the capital plan to the Finance Committee. Discuss proposed articles for the October 26th annual town meeting, including review and discuss Planning Board articles, review and discuss Clinton Avenue easement articles, review and discuss fertilizer control bylaw. Discuss and consider a vote to send a letter to state legislators regarding expanding the state low-interest loan program for septic system upgrades to improve nitrogen removal in nitrogen-sensitive areas. On to the minutes. Review and consider a vote to approve the minutes of July 27th, Select Board reports, and then future agenda items. So we did move through that quickly, but it was rather brief. So hopefully that didn't put too many people to sleep. The headline above the fold, if there was such a thing in a digital newspaper that we read from, Falmouth Walk celebrates 35 years and remembers Eddie Doyle by Lynn Hutchinson. When the Falmouth Walk marks its 35th year on Saturday, August 15th, one familiar face will be missing. For the first time since the event began in 1991, co-founder Edward Eddie Doyle will not be there to greet walkers or watch friends and families gather on the grounds of St. Barnabas Church for the picnic that follows the 5K walk. Doyle, who died in January at age 85, helped create the Falmouth Walk with his friend Tommy Leonard. 35 years later, organizers say this year's anniversary will be both a celebration of the event's longevity and a tribute to one of the people who helped shape it. It'll be a little difficult at the start, Falmouth Walk President Chris Morrissey said. We're stewards of the walk. The walk exists in and of itself, regardless of who's doing it. Our role is to make sure we continue to be stewards of it and make it be something that Tommy and Eddie would be proud of. Leonard died in 2019. Continuing a long-time tradition, participants will receive a commemorative T-shirt. This year's design is dedicated to Doyle, featuring the phrase, "Cheers to Eddie," a nod to his decades behind the bar at Boston's Cheers, formerly the Bull and Finch Pub, and the inspiration for the television sitcom Cheers. The shirt also features the event's sailboat logo, which Doyle designed more than 3 decades ago. For this year's anniversary, the logo includes the words, "Thanks, Eddie," in place of the event's established date. There was another side to Eddie, committee member Russ Pelletier said. People knew him from behind the bar, but he was very artistic. Doyle studied graphic arts before becoming a bartender and fundraiser. He earned an associate's degree in graphic arts from the School of Practical Art in Boston. In addition to designing logos, posters, and menus, he spent decades organizing charitable events in Boston and on Cape Cod. He was always thinking about the next fundraiser and the next way to help someone in need, Falmouth Walk Vice President Tom Walrath said. Leonard and Doyle launched the event in 1991 during Falmouth Road Race weekend, believing there was room for a family-friendly fundraiser anyone could join. The first walk benefited the Babe Ruth World Series, which had been disrupted by Hurricane Bob. Today, the walk draws about 850 to 900 participants. The roughly 3-mile course winds down Walker Street to Surf Drive, and it continues to Scranton Avenue and returns to Main Street before ending at St. Barnabas's Episcopal Church, where walkers gather for food, raffles, and auctions. Although the organization could accommodate more participants, Morrissey said organizers have intentionally resisted expanding the event because Doyle believed the walk should remain intimate and community-focused. "If you go behind St. Barnabas and see the crowd, it's perfect," Morrissey said about the after-walk picnic. "You don't want it to become something else." Throughout the year, the walk's mission remains focused on supporting local nonprofit organizations, and this year, proceeds will benefit 13 Falmouth area organizations serving a range of community needs, including food assistance, health care, youth programs, senior services, transportation, and animal welfare. Every organization goes through a grant review process, and one requirement has remained unchanged. The money must stay in Falmouth. "We try to make sure we can do as much good on the widest scope as possible," Morrissey said. Last year alone, the walk distributed $58,000 to 12 nonprofits. In addition to the $35 registration fee, proceeds from the event's auction and raffle will be donated to the nonprofits. Pelletier, who has volunteered with the walk since its early days, said the event's impact extends beyond the money it raises. "When you're doing good for people you don't even know, that's what it's about," he said. This year's anniversary also marks another transition. Pelletier and his wife Joan, who have spent decades helping organize the walk, plan to retire from the committee after this year's event. Many of the original committee members have already stepped away from organizing the annual fundraiser. Morrissey said recruiting new volunteers is essential to ensuring the walk continues for decades to come. "We're always looking for new people," he said. "People bring different perspectives, different skills, new ideas. That's how something like this lasts 35 years. The 35th Annual Falmouth Walk will begin at 10 a.m. on August 15th. Online registration is open, An in-person registration will be available on Friday, August 14th from 4 to 7 p.m. while space remains. There will be no day of registration. The next headline in the Falmouth Enterprise: Seacoast Shores renovation project highlights challenges of town's septic rules, by Katie Nelson. A home renovation project on Edgewater Drive West has become a test case for Falmouth's year-old septic regulations, highlighting questions about when homeowners should be required to install costly nitrogen-removing septic systems, even if those systems could be replaced by municipal sewer service just a few years later. The project has sparked weeks of discussion before multiple town boards and committees during the past month. The project at the center of all this discussion is a planned expansion of a 1,388 square foot ranch-style home owned by Amanda N. Hunt. The property's been in Hunt's family since 1959. Family members own other properties on the same street, and Hunt's family has long-standing ties to Cape Cod and Falmouth. Even though the property sits in a nitrogen-sensitive area, a standard Title V septic system has been proposed rather than a denitrifying septic system. Water Quality Management Committee member Jonathan Kaufman highlighted the Board of Health's decision during his committee report at the committee's August 5th meeting. Title V septic system installer Maury Harlow Hawks spoke in support of the proposed system during the Board of Health's June 22nd meeting, while neighbors have voiced both support and opposition to the renovation before both the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Conservation Commission. Under the Board of Health's Home Rule Septic Regulation, upgrades to best available nitrogen-removing technology, known as BANRT or BAN-RT, septic systems, also known as Innovative and Alternative or IA systems, are required when certain triggers are met. On October 20th of 2025, the board approved regulations requiring IA systems for new construction and any projects that increase septic flow within Falmouth-regulated nitrogen-sensitive areas. The proposed renovation would add a second story to the existing 5-bedroom home, but according to plans, it would not increase the number of bedrooms. Under Title V regulations, that means there'd be no increase in septic flow. However, plans also include a family room, an office and exercise room, prompting questions from board members including George Hufelder and Amy Roth. The regulation is intended to reduce nitrogen entering groundwater through septic systems, because most of Falmouth's water bodies are impaired by nitrogen pollution. The Mass DEP, or Department of Environmental Protection, requires the town to submit watershed management plans outlining how it plans to reduce the nitrogen entering groundwater, estuaries, freshwater ponds, and coastal waters. Mass DEP identifies nitrogen-sensitive areas and assigns total maximum daily load, or TMDL, thresholds for nitrogen. In Falmouth, the target TMDL threshold for impaired water bodies is 10 milligrams of nitrogen per liter. The Board of Health regulation applies to Falmouth nitrogen-regulated areas, including Mass DEP-designated nitrogen-sensitive areas and any water bodies listed in the Clean Water Act Section 303D Integrated Report, regardless of whether a TMDL has been assigned. Following the 2025 public hearing process, the regulation was expanded to include Black Beach, Great Sipawasset Marsh, and the Drinking Water Resource Protection Overlay District. In addition to Board of Health approval, Hunt is seeking a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals to expand the first floor, add a second story, and exceed the 20% lot coverage limit. The Conservation Commission approved an order of conditions for the additions, deck reconstruction, and mitigation plantings on July 29th. The existing ranch-style home located off Seacoast Shores currently relies on a cesspool, which is considered an automatic system failure under state regulations, and it must be replaced. Hunt's engineer, Chuck Rowland of Cape and Islands Engineering, proposed a standard Title V system to replace the outdated cesspool. Over 4 hearings, the Board of Health debated many factors, including what constitutes new construction, how bedrooms should be defined, how increases in septic flow should be calculated, and whether occupancy assumptions per bedroom are realistic. Members also considered the property's location, including its dock on Eel Pond between the Central Avenue and Seacoast Shores peninsulas. The home is within a coastal pond overlay district, a flood zone, and a nitrogen-sensitive area. Seacoast Shores has been identified as a potential future sewer expansion area, although no final plans have been approved. Several wastewater projects must be completed before sewer service can be extended. Among those projects is the town's planned ocean outfall pipe, which will discharge treated wastewater into Nantucket Sound. Following permitting, funding approvals, design, and construction, the outfall is expected to be operational by 2032. Sewer service is not expected to reach Seacoast Shores before then. The town's watershed management plans remain in the early drafting stages, and they're expected to reach final draft form by the end of the year. The plans will outline how the town intends to bring impaired watersheds into compliance with nitrogen limits. IA systems are more expensive than standard Title V systems. In an interview with the Enterprise, Hunt said she received informal estimates of around $55,000 to install a 5-bedroom Title V septic system. The tight waterfront lot also requires dry wells to be installed. Based on estimates she collected, Hunt said an IA system would add another $50,000 to $60,000 on top of the cost of the tank, not including quarterly monitoring of roughly $2,000 per year. Hunt said she feared an expensive IA system, which, if maintained and operated properly, may have a useful life of roughly 20 to 30 years, could ultimately be abandoned when municipal sewer reaches Seacoast Shores. Hunt said the requirement is an unnecessary expense because the proposed renovation is not increasing septic flow. The site plan design also reserves space to add an IA system later, if one is required. Hunt said her goal is to renovate the home so it can remain in her family for generations. She argued spending that much on an IA system that could be removed a few years later to connect to municipal sewer would be a significant expense for what may prove to be a temporary solution. The Select Board plans to establish a 5-member advisory committee to recommend ways to reduce the financial burden on individual property owners required to install denitrifying systems. Applications are expected to be considered later this month. Hunt said she's already spent several $1,000s pursuing the renovation. Engineering plans alone exceeded $20,000, and additional costs, including Conservation Commission required plantings and a new 1,500-gallon Title V septic system, have continued to mount. She also hired attorney Brian J. Wall to represent the project before the Board of Health. Applicants are responsible for paying legal consultants involved in the hearing process. A Title V system is approved. During its July 20th meeting, the Board of Health spent more than an hour crafting a motion. Members emphasized the importance of applying the regulation fairly and consistently while fulfilling the board's responsibility to protect the environment. Vice Chairwoman Roth ultimately moved to approve a Title V system for the project with variances for setback distances from the soil absorption system, the foundation, and the coastal embayment. The approval included a sunset clause requiring Hunt to return to the board in 3 years or when the property is sold, whichever comes first. At that time, she may appeal the clause and request a revised deadline for installing an IA system. Hugh Felder, a co-founder of the Massachusetts Alternative Septic System Test Center, former director of the Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment, a Class 4 treatment plant operator, certified Title V soil evaluator, and a septic system inspector and registered sanitarian, cast the lone vote against the motion. As the board considers revisions to its regulation and the town continues developing watershed management plans that will guide installation of denitrifying septic systems over the next 20 years, members acknowledge the challenges that are posed by the current rules. When we made the regulation last year, the reason we didn't include renovations was because we thought it was too project-specific, Board of Health member Dr. George P. Topoulos said during the July 20th meeting. We thought we were going to have to do that on a case-by-case basis. And now, when we're on a case-by-case basis, we're saying we can't do it because we didn't write a rule, he added. Following Hunt's hearing on June 22nd, Health Agent Scott McGann said the regulation, as written, has made his job impossible. I spent an hour and a half talking to her, meaning Hunt, 6 months ago. It's not an increase in flow. You don't need it. I don't know what to tell people. I'm going to say if you need to go to the Board of Health, good luck. I don't know what to tell you. I can't give you any consultation, McGann said. At its August 3rd meeting, the Board of Health requested that a discussion about possible amendments to the regulation be placed on a future agenda. Next headline in the Falmouth Enterprise of Friday, August 7th. Falmouth residents can now request the 95-gallon trash carts by Lynn Hutchinson. Residents who need more room for their weekly trash can now upgrade to a 95-gallon cart, the latest step in Falmouth's transition to automated curbside collection. The larger carts can be requested by completing a form on the town's website. An announcement posted by the town states that the form is only for households requesting a 95-gallon trash cart. Residents seeking any other cart-related changes are asked to contact Nauset Disposal directly. When the automated collection program was introduced, every household receiving town trash service was assigned a standard 65-gallon cart. Residents who preferred a smaller 35-gallon cart or a larger 95-gallon cart were told they could request a different size based on their household's needs. Until now, however, though, the larger carts had not been available. Town officials previously said that the 95-gallon carts would be offered upon request to households with a large number of residents or special circumstances, such as medical conditions that generate additional waste. The Solid Waste Advisory Committee, as well as Department of Public Works, are working to develop a set of specific qualifications for residents to receive a 95-gallon cart. The town's also considering ways to offer the larger cart to residents who don't fit need-based requirements. Residents will likely need to justify their request at a different step, the advisory committee discussed this week, as the current form only requires requests to include their name, email address, and their full property address. The current form doesn't include space for justification. Currently, there is no timeline for when larger carts will be delivered, as the carts still need to be manufactured. The town will also need to evaluate who will qualify. No deadline has been set for the online form either. The standardized carts are part of the town's 5-year contract extension with Nauset Disposal, which shifts curbside trash collection to a fully automated system. The wheeled carts are designed to be emptied by automated collection trucks, reducing manual lifting for workers while improving efficiency. The program builds on the town's transition to automated recycling collection in 2022, and it's part of a broader effort to reduce trash volume. Under the agreement, Nauset Disposal owns, maintains, repairs, and replaces both the trash and the recycling carts, shifting those responsibilities away from the Department of Public Works. The latest announcement follows a rocky rollout of the standardized trash cart program. Earlier this year, more than 1,000 households mistakenly received the smaller 35-gallon carts after Nauset Disposal and its third-party delivery contractor received shipments of the smaller carts before the standard 65-gallon containers. The town temporarily paused deliveries while the issue was addressed, and officials said affected households would receive the correct size carts. The mix-up followed another issue at the start of the rollout, when some residents received used trash carts that were dirty or still contained trash. Once the transition is complete, Households will be limited to one official town-issued trash cart for weekly collection. During a grace period running through Labor Day, residents can continue using a second compliant trash cart. After that, only the town-issued cart will be collected, and trash left outside the container will not be picked up. Our next headline: Falmouth moves to rewrite demolition delay bylaw after legal concerns are raised, by Lynn Hutchinson. The Historical Commission voted this week to advance revisions to the town's demolition delay bylaw, a move intended to address concerns raised by town council about constitutional protections for property owners. The Commission's discussion followed an extensive review by Town Council Maura E. O'Keefe, who warned in June that portions of the existing bylaw could expose the town to legal challenges because property owners could potentially face demolition restrictions without adequate notice or an opportunity to participate in the designation process. Currently, buildings placed on the list of significant buildings are automatically subject to the town's demolition delay bylaw, which allows the Historical Commission to postpone demolition for up to 12 months while alternatives are explored. The existing list was compiled between 2017 and 2020. However, O'Keefe informed the Commission that the list could cause constitutional implications, pointing to the Fourth Amendment, which protects a person from unreasonable searches and seizures of their possessions without a warrant, and the Fifth Amendment, which in part prevents the taking of private property without compensation. My concern with the Fourth Amendment is that the owner of the property is not aware that their property is subject to some sort of restriction of its use, and they weren't even allowed to participate in the process of it being labeled as such, O'Keefe said. While O'Keefe said the current bylaw doesn't necessarily constitute an unconstitutional taking of property, she cautioned that the town must be careful about how it imposes restrictions on property owners. She further explained that while a clause in the Fifth Amendment prohibits the government from taking private property without just compensation, this demolition delay does not rise to that level because it's temporary and it doesn't permanently remove property rights. My research shows that we're not there, she said. This isn't a constitutional taking, necessarily, because it's simply a delay. However, she said the town needs stronger procedures to avoid potential due process concerns. After reviewing demolition delay bylaws from communities across Massachusetts, O'Keefe said, she identified 3 key elements that are commonly found elsewhere that are missing from Falmouth's regulations. The first is that demolition delay reviews generally begin only after a property owner files an application to demolish a building. The procedure is now completely reversed, so that the only buildings that are going to be subject to the bylaw are ones that are proposed to be demolished in the first place, O'Keefe said. It's not to capture every single building, only ones where demolition is on the table. Under the proposed bylaw, the process would no longer rely on a standing list of significant buildings. Instead, once a demolition permit application is submitted, the building commissioner would notify the Historical Commission, triggering a preliminary administrative review by planning department staff to determine whether the building meets the bylaw's eligibility requirements. The second element found in other municipalities' bylaws was a clear threshold for eligibility, O'Keefe said, noting most communities she reviewed included an age requirement, with many requiring buildings to be at least 75 years old before further evaluation. Commission members voted on Tuesday, August 4th, to set the initial age threshold at 50 years, meaning only buildings at least that old would move forward for additional review. To preliminarily qualify as a significant building, a structure would also need to meet at least one additional historical criterion, such as being listed on or eligible for the National or State Register of Historic Places, being associated with significant people or events, or possessing important architectural or historical characteristics. If a building preliminarily preliminarily qualifies, the Historical Commission would be required to schedule a public hearing within 30 days. The applicant, property owner if different from the applicant, and abutters would all receive notice, and the Commission would publish public notice of the hearing and the proposed demolition. The applicant or an authorized representative would be required to attend the public hearing or lose the ability to later request a waiver of the demolition delay. If, after the hearing, the Commission determined the building is historically significant, a 12-month demolition delay would begin, and during that period, the building commissioner could not issue a demolition permit unless the Commission grants a waiver. The third proposed change addresses what O'Keefe described as one of the most significant shortcomings of the current bylaw: meaningful involvement by the property owner. These things are missing from the Falmouth bylaw, she said. The revised bylaw changes the definition of an applicant to ensure property owners are aware of and involved in the demolition review process from the beginning. O'Keefe said she found only one other Massachusetts committee with a process similar to Falmouth's bylaw, and that community is now defending the regulation in court after a property owner discovered his building had been placed on a significant buildings list without his knowledge. If the owner decides to seek relief in court, I expect he'll get it, she said. The proposed bylaw would also streamline the waiver process. O'Keefe explained that applicants could request a waiver from the demolition delay at the same time they submit their demolition permit application if they believe the Commission is likely to impose a delay. That would allow the Commission to consider both the building's significance and the waiver request at the same meeting, rather than requiring the applicant to return at a later date. The proposal retains the emergency demolition provisions included in the current bylaw. With the Historical Commission's approval, the proposed revisions will move forward for additional review ahead of October town meeting, when voters will decide whether to adopt the amendment. The Select Board will also have an opportunity to review the proposed bylaw before the town meeting warrant is finalized. Commission members also indicated they're likely to develop additional rules and regulations to provide more detailed guidance on determining whether buildings meet the bylaw's historical significance standards. We're just a few minutes past the midway portion in our reading. Regular listeners, I'm sure, are aware it's at this stage that we move to a different kind of local news, which are the obituaries, the death notices, and the memorials that are listed in that week's Enterprise. And in the Falmouth Enterprise of Friday, August 7th of 2026, the first obituaries of George H. Bigelow of East Falmouth, who passed on July 28th at the age of 83. He was a native of Falmouth, and he graduated from Lawrence High School in 1960. He was affectionately known as Chip. He attended Brown University, earning a bachelor's degree in classics. As a member of the class of 1964, he was president of his fraternity, Psi Upsilon. He later received his master's degree in business administration from Suffolk University. Known for his competitive spirit, he was also just as known for being gracious. Win or lose, he was always the first to buy a round of drinks. He was also known for his sense of humor, wisdom, and generosity. He leaves his wife of 47 years, Wendy Bigelow, and many family and friends. He also served as chairman of the board of Newton Wellesley Hospital. A celebration of life will be held on Saturday, August 15th at 4 p.m. at Grace Memorial Chapel in East Falmouth. Guests are encouraged to wear colors that celebrate a life well lived. The next obituary is of Thomas J. Mullane of Falmouth, a U.S. Navy veteran who passed on August 5th at the age of 82. Thank you, Mr. Mullane, for your service. He grew up in Arlington and attended Boston Latin Academy and Arlington High School before serving in the Navy from 1962 to 1966. A lover of planes, he obtained his pilot's license in 1975. He also accomplished his dream of completing his college education, getting his bachelor's degree in English literature in 1992. Walden was one of his favorite books, which inspired his appreciation and love of nature, and to appreciate the simple things in life. In 1970, he married Eleanor Marie McDougall. They celebrated their 56th wedding anniversary in April. Visiting hours will be held Monday, August 10th from 4 to 7 p.m. at Chapman Funerals and Cremations in Mashpee. A funeral mass will be celebrated on Tuesday, August 11th at 11 a.m. at St. Anthony's Church in East Falmouth. That's this coming Monday and Tuesday. And the burial will be private. The next obituaries of Monique L. Frey of East Falmouth, who passed on August 2nd at the age of 88. She was born in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. A devoted Catholic, she was known for her compassion and putting others first, including frequently donating to her local church food pantry to help those in need. She leaves her husband of 66 years, Richard Frey, and many family and friends. A funeral mass will be celebrated on Friday, August 21st at 10 a.m. at St. Anthony's Church in East Falmouth, and the burial will follow thereafter at St. Anthony's Cemetery. The next obituaries of Carl O. Bowen of Falmouth, who died March 30th at the age of 92. A celebration of life will be held Wednesday, August 12th from 3 to 5 p.m. at 15 Upland Avenue in Falmouth. Our next obituaries of Alfred S. Langlois of Falmouth, a U.S. Navy veteran who passed on July 4th after a brief battle with cancer at the age of 78. He served his country in the U.S. Navy for 6 years before being honorably discharged in 1974. Mr. Langlois, thank you for that service. A barber for more than 60 years, he owned and operated Harry's Barber Shop for 43 years before retiring in November of 2025. He was known for his kindness, friendly conversation, and commitment to his customers and the community. He leaves his longtime companion, April Marchesin, and his 2 sons and his brother. A service will be held Friday, August 14th at 1:45 p.m. at the Massachusetts National Cemetery in Bourne. The first memorial is of Virginia F. Long, who passed on July 14th of 2026, surrounded by family. She was a beloved daughter, sister, a mother to 3 boys, a grandmother of 7, and a great-grandmother of 5. She was born in West Boylston, Massachusetts, and was generous to everyone she came in contact with, having donated to her favorite political causes and charities of all kinds. She also served as a Cub Scout leader, read books to the blind on a local radio show, supported Red Cross blood drives in her community for many years, and participated in the Salvation Army Christmas charity events. Ginny was preceded in death by her husband Rick Long, who passed in March of 2018. She is survived by many family and friends. She was a long-term resident of Falmouth, Seven Lakes, North Carolina, and Madison, Alabama. Following her wishes, she's been cremated and will be interred with her husband at the Sand Hills Military Cemetery in Fayetteville, North Carolina. The memorial service will be held at the West End Presbyterian Church in Seven Lakes, North Carolina, September 25th at 10 a.m. In lieu of flowers, please consider a donation to the animal welfare group of your choice. The next memorial is of Virginia C. Gregg, who passed peacefully July 29th at the age of 90. She was born in Trenton, and Ginny, as she was known, graduated from Princeton High School, earning a degree in biology from Brown University and working as a hematology technician at Sloan Kettering Institute, where she met her future husband, Thomas Gregg. They were married in Princeton in 1963. They moved a number of times during Tom's medical residency and settled in Falmouth in 1972. Ginny always said her most important work was raising her family, but she was also a force to be reckoned with around Falmouth, working as the president of the League of Women Voters, a trustee of Falmouth Academy, a Cub Scout den mother, and a town meeting member for over 30 years. A congregant of St. Joseph's Church in Woods Hole, Ginny taught catechism classes and served on numerous committees. Ginny is survived by her husband Thomas and many family and friends. A funeral mass will be held Thursday, August 13th, that's this coming Thursday, at 11 a.m. at St. Patrick's Church, 511 Main Street in Falmouth. A private burial will be held in Milton Cemetery in Milton. A memorial celebration of her life will be held in Falmouth later this fall. In lieu of flowers, the family requests gifts be made in Ginny's name to the Falmouth Service Center, falmouthservicecenter.org, located at 611 Gifford Street in Falmouth, Mass. 02540. And our final memorial is of Donald Walker Burnett, who at the age of 87 passed peacefully at home August 1st. He was born February 23, 1939 in Aberdeen, Mississippi. As a young child, Donald relocated with his family from Mississippi to Maywood, Illinois, joining many other Southern African American families who journeyed north during the Great Migration in search of work and a better life. Both of his parents valued education deeply, and Donald was raised in a household built on hard work, discipline, and love. He grew up running around Maywood along his 6 siblings, whose bond and influence shaped him profoundly during his formative years. Always a scholar, Donald excelled in school throughout his youth. After graduating from high school, he attended Southern Illinois University on a wrestling scholarship and went on to earn a master's degree from Western Illinois University. Donald served 2 years in the United States Army during the Vietnam War, working at Walter Reed Hospital, where he contributed to scientific research. Mr. Burnett, thank you for that service. He later moved to Boston, where he met Susan Mendlowitz, who would later become his wife. They were married for 57 years, and together Don and Susie made their home on Cape Cod, choosing to raise their family close to nature and the seashore, a landscape Donald cherished for the rest of his life. Donald is survived by his loving wife, Susie, and many family and friends. He will be remembered by all who knew and loved him. The following residents, former residents or family of residents of Bourne, Mashpee, and Sandwich recently died. Phyllis K. Briggs, 84, of Plymouth, died July 30th, and Louise S. Carandi, 93, of East Sandwich, died July 18th. And with that, we have come to the end of our obituaries, death notices, and memorials listed in today's Friday, August 7th, Falmouth Enterprise. Now is a good time to remind you that if you miss any of the information that we share in our readings, such as those service dates or what you want to catch up on in terms of emails and things like that we mention, you can always go to audiblelocalledger.org. It's a fully disability-compliant website. Click on the Listen tab, and we keep 150 chronologically arranged readings that we do, so the most recent are at the top, and you can easily catch up on anything that you might have missed. We also keep a wide variety of periodicals and literature up there for your listening pleasure. Those don't come down. And we have a wide selection of radio plays that our volunteers put together under the Ledger Actors Workshop. Our shopping circulars are put up there on Saturday and Sunday. They are aired from 12 to 2 on Saturday, so you know what's on sale at the grocery store, and from 11 to 1 on Sunday. Hopefully, before you do your shopping, you can give them a listen. All of that is free for people who are blind or print disabled at audiblelocalledger.org. Heading back to the front of the paper as we go back to the news section, different kind of local news. Water chief warns that growth could strain the town supply. Water reserves at Long Pond are not recharging at historic rates. Water Superintendent Matthew P. Lanin wrote to the Planning Board in a letter dated July 28th. During the 4th of July weekend, when temperatures reached 95 degrees Fahrenheit with high humidity, Lanin said, water usage was so high that the town's elevated storage tanks could not refill overnight. Lanin is scheduled to speak with the Barnstable County Board of Regional Commissioners at a virtual meeting on Wednesday, August 12th. The meeting will focus on the realities of housing pressures from the state and the impact future growth could have on the Cape's water supply. Town Manager Michael Renshaw confirmed that Lanin will also give a presentation to the Select Board. A date for that discussion hasn't yet been determined. In his letter to the planning board, Lannon opposed two potential town meeting articles. One draft article would allow duplexes by special permit in residential zones, where single-family homes are currently allowed. Another would expand the mixed residential commercial overlay district known as Mr. COD by removing the requirement that eligible properties be connected to town sewer. Both proposals would increase housing stock and, in turn, increase demand on the town's water supply. Lannon wrote, "My other major concern is that Long Pond is not recharging to its historical total volume." He added that survey information from the U.S. Geological Survey shows that Long Pond, which provides a substantial amount of the town's drinking water supply, estimated by Lannon to be about 60%, has experienced a continued decline in water levels. Although the current year-round population doesn't appear to create a significant operational strain on the water system, Lannon wrote, it's important to recognize that the system was designed to meet peak seasonal demand while also maintaining adequate fire suppression capacity. Water Quality Management Committee Chairman Edward Jalowich said that the low recharge rate is cause for concern, because continued demand could affect water pressure needed for fire suppression. If those tanks don't have enough head in them to push water to a fire hydrant, they, meaning the firefighters, could open up a hydrant and get a dribble instead of a blast, Jalowich said. He added that such conditions could lead to a disaster, especially when trying to suppress fires in densely populated areas such as downtown and Woods Hole. If this, the potential zoning articles, moves forward, we potentially might be exceeding our withdrawal permits. We can only provide so much water based on our permit, Lannon told the planning board at its meeting on July 28th. The articles before the planning board haven't yet been approved at a public hearing, and they might not move forward to town meeting. The planning board hasn't taken a vote. Lannon urged the board to consider delaying the proposed articles until irrigation policies can be strengthened. Otherwise, he said, the town might need to implement a total ban on lawn irrigation, aggressive water conservation enforcement, expanded public outreach, and compliance monitoring. Lannon has said the water department does not have enough staff to effectively enforce outdoor watering restrictions during drought conditions and limit residential outdoor water use. Of the department's 17 employees, 6 are responsible for water production, 11 maintain the water system. In many cases, he said, shutting off a customer's water is not a legal enforcement option under CMR 22. With Long Pond levels lower than usual and relief from drought conditions unlikely, Lannon said, the town has begun the conceptual design process to bring the Ashamit well back online. That would give us an additional source for year-round water for the community, Lannon said. He cautioned restoring the well could take up to 10 years. The well was closed in the 1980s after groundwater contamination from firefighting materials that were used at Joint Base Cape Cod. The planning board voted to continue the public hearing on the proposed zoning amendment articles to its next meeting on Tuesday, August 11th. Moving inside the paper, we've completed everything on the front page. Falmouth reports fewer than 10 cases of tick-borne alpha-gal syndrome by Katie Nelson. Just across Vineyard Sound, Martha's Vineyard has become a hotspot for alpha-gal syndrome, reporting 416 confirmed cases so far this year. In Falmouth, the number of confirmed cases remains in the single digits. Fewer than 10 Falmouth residents have tested positive for alpha-gal syndrome known as AGS, according to health agent Scott McGann. AGS is a tick-borne condition that can cause people to develop an allergic reaction to red meat and other products made from mammals after being bitten by a Lone Star tick. The Mass Department of Public Health, the MADPH, began tracking AGS cases and designated the illness a reportable disease on April 1st, McGann said. According to the latest Department of Public Health report on tick-borne diseases, there were 16 confirmed cases of alpha-gal syndrome across the Upper Cape in June. July data hasn't yet been released. The positive cases identified in Falmouth have not been isolated to any one area of town, McGann said. Pinpointing where and when a person was bitten by a tick can be difficult. Symptoms of alpha-gal syndrome might not appear until 2 to 8 hours after eating red meat or certain animal products, making it harder to connect the illness to a previous tick bite. Ticks are commonly found in areas with tall vegetation, including long grass, backyards, gardens, and walking trails, where they wait to latch onto people and animals passing by. Residents should check themselves, their children, and their pets thoroughly for ticks after spending time outdoors. If exposure cannot be avoided, health officials recommend wearing clothing that covers the skin, including long pants and long-sleeve shirts. Dog walkers, landscapers, hunters, and hikers should be especially cautious. AGS develops when the Lone Star tick's saliva enters the bloodstream through a bite. After exposure, symptoms include hives, nausea, indigestion, swelling, and in severe cases, anaphylaxis can develop 2 to 6 hours after eating red meat or dairy products, according to the CDC. People who discover an embedded tick that's actively feeding should seek medical attention, McGann said. After a tick has been completely removed, guidance on the town's website recommends sending it to the Laboratory of Medical Zoology at the University of Massachusetts Amherst for testing. The report they provide is a valuable tool that can help you make informed decisions considering your medical care, the guidance states. As with Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses, a blood test is used to diagnose alpha-gal syndrome, but avoiding tick bites remains the best way to prevent the condition. Falmouth Farmers Market adds a Sunday market. Residents who can't make it to the Falmouth Farmers Market Thursdays now have a weekend option. The Falmouth Farmers Market has added a Sunday market, held from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. each week through November 15th at Mullenhall School at 130 Catherine Lee Bates Road. There'll be no Sunday market on August 16th because of the Falmouth Road Race. Organizers said the additional market was added in response to community feedback, and it's intended to make fresh local food and other products more accessible to year-round residents. Vendors will offer produce, preserved foods, flowers, and plants. The Thursday market will continue from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Marine Park on Scranton Avenue. Both markets accept SNAP, HIP, and WIC benefits. Parking's available in the Mullenhall School lot, with a market set up next to the carousel. Our next headline: Committee hopes to educate parents on the difference between e-bikes and e-motos, by Lynn Hutchinson. While the legislature considers adopting statewide regulations governing e-bikes and e-motos, Falmouth's Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee is exploring ways to help parents better understand the growing differences between the electric devices and the safety risks that are associated with each. The discussion at the committee's meeting on Wednesday, August 5th, comes as electric assist bicycles continue to grow in popularity, while higher-speed e-motos have become increasingly common. Committee members said many e-motos, which operate more like mopeds or dirt bikes, are intentionally designed to resemble traditional e-bikes, making it difficult for parents to distinguish between the two when making a purchase. Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee Chairwoman Catherine K.J. Jansen said other municipalities have found success by distributing multilingual buyer's guides through schools and offering online educational webinars for families. She added that Falmouth Police Chief Jeffrey Lurie has expressed interest in partnering on a similar initiative. The committee's concerns are largely driven by injuries involving younger riders. Part of what's happening is that the accidents and injuries are primarily among 12 to 15-year-olds, the pre-driver's license kids, Jansen said. She noted that emergency physicians are seeing severe injuries involving teenagers and preteens riding higher-speed electric motorcycles, including spinal, facial, and cranial trauma. Jansen also said many crashes involving young riders on bike paths never appear in police crash reports because no motor vehicles involved. The discussion highlighted a gap between police crash statistics and hospital records, suggesting injuries involving children on bike paths and trails might be underrepresented in safety data. According to the state's website, e-bikes can have a top speed of 20 miles per hour, compared to e-motos that can have a maximum speed of 50 miles per hour or faster. Currently, e-bikes are defined by two classes. Class 1 e-bikes are built with a motor that provides assistance only when the rider is pedaling and stops assisting when the bike reaches 20 miles per hour. Class 2 bikes are equipped with a throttle-actuated motor that stops providing assistance when the e-bike reaches 20 miles per hour. Class 3 e-bikes are currently not defined by state law, but they can reach a top speed of 28 miles per hour. E-motos lack functional pedals, and they're equipped with stronger motors. They're similar to motorized bicycles, mopeds, or motor vehicles, and the vehicle requires a driver's license and other safety standards. An educational campaign could also help prepare families for changes expected under the state's proposed Ride Safe Act. The legislation now under consideration would establish what the state has described as the nation's first speed-based regulatory framework for electric bicycles and other micromobility devices. Lower-speed e-bikes would continue to operate much like bicycles, while faster devices would face stricter requirements, including minimum age limits, registration, licensing, insurance, and restrictions on where they can be ridden. The bill would also establish helmet requirements, mandatory safety equipment, and stronger enforcement authority for the police. And we'll close this reading of the Falmouth Enterprise with the editorial from the Falmouth Editorial Board of the Enterprise, Protecting Yourself and Loved Ones from Elder Fraud. Late last month, the Boston Globe published an excellent deep dive into financial scams, mainly Bitcoin and other digital currency scams that target the elderly population. The article focused largely on Bitcoin ATMs and their role in these scams, particularly at one specific location in Haverhill, where 5 people lost a total of $128,000 in 24 months. Bitcoin are just one of many such schemes intended to dupe people, most often older folks, out of thousands of dollars. Some scammers pose as family members in distress, seeking money for bail or some other exorbitant fee they're facing. Others pose as law enforcement or debt collectors, asking for money for unpaid fines or to cancel a non-existent arrest warrant. Still more pose as financial institutions providing urgent instructions to protect your money by moving it into an account that they drain. Casey Myers, Director of Communications for the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office, told us this week that the department often fields reports of phone scams like these. Many involve a scammer demanding money due to a missed court date, she said, and the calls are designed to both convince and intimidate the victim into acting fast without thinking it through. The scammer insists on immediate payment, often through digital payment platforms like Zelle and Venmo, gift cards, or Bitcoin, which Myers said is a huge red flag. These fraud schemes are an epidemic. Cape and Islands District Attorney Robert Gallibois held a summit last fall focusing on the growing senior fraud and abuse problem, which he said is nearing crisis level in our communities. In a frame of 21 months, he said the Barnstable Police Department received 393 calls regarding elder fraud. Reports were put together for 253 of those cases, but the police were only able to move forward with charges on 15 of them. Mashpee Police Chief Scott Carleen told us this week that the department deals with these types of situations all the time, and that the elderly population is often targeted in these crimes. Myers told us that the office received 3 reports in just one day back in March, and just this week a person came in panicked after receiving a call about missed jury duty and was told they had to pay a $3,500 fine or face arrest. Actually pursuing these crimes poses a challenge. The assets are often hard to trace or recover, and prosecuting is difficult. So the best defenses really start at home before the phone even rings. And with that advice, we've come to the end of our reading of the Falmouth Enterprise for today, Friday, August 7th of 2026. This is your reader, Eric, saying be well, be safe, look after each other. Remember our veterans, especially those we've lost recently. Bye for now.